Hi folks, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. So we all know by now that hallucinations is by far the biggest problem with LLMs currently. We want LLMs to synthesize answers that are factually correct. And there are two broad categories of techniques that you can use to do that. One is RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, where you try to give the LLM a corpus of documents that it should ground its answers on. That doesn't guarantee that it will always produce correct answers. The other category of techniques is to fine-tune the LLM with human-labeled data specific to your domain or to your corpus. The problem with that, of course, is the humans. It's expensive and it's time-consuming to have a bunch of data be labeled by humans that you can then use for fine-tuning. The cool thing about the paper we're looking at today, which, by the way, hit archive just a couple of days before recording, is that they are proposing a technique to fine-tune language models to have better factuality without any human labeling. Obviously, that begs the question, in the absence of human labeling, how exactly do you judge whether an answer produced by an LLM is factual or not? And they have two ways that they're trying to do this. One is to use some existing reference like Wikipedia to compare the LLM's answers with, and then see if the answer is consistent with well-known facts. The other method is not even using references or other documents, but it simply uses the model's own uncertainty, the model's own confidence score in the answer as a proxy for factuality. This is their end-to-end pipeline, and they're trying to improve the factuality of long-form generation, things like biographies of well-known people. The first thing they do is they sample the model responses. So they get an LLM response for the input query, say writing a biography of Yo-Yo Ma, and they get two responses from the LLM. This pair of responses is then put through this automated factuality ranking, which you could do either with comparison to a reference set or just using the model's own calibration of uncertainty. And what you get from that is a preference for one of these two generations. And now that they have a preference, an entire data set of such preferences, they use a new technique called direct preference optimization, which is an alternative to RLHF, to then fine-tune the model to be more factual. Let's look at how they do this automated judgment of factuality, because that really is the key new contribution of this paper. The first thing they do is, given a generation from the LLM, they extract the simplest, most atomic claims from that passage. The way they do that is by using a more powerful LLM like GPT 3.5. Now, once you have these atomic claims, you have two options. You could either use reference-based checks. So you take these claims and you then look up a reference like Wikipedia and ask the question, is this claim supported by the article? And this check is done with a fine-tuned llama model, so a pretty small model. If you go the other route, the reference-free route, you take the claim and you convert it to a question. So for example, if the claim was Yo-Yo Ma was born in 1951, you convert it to a question, what year was Yo-Yo Ma born? And you use a more powerful model like GPT 3.5 to do that. And then you sample a lot of answers, something like 20, from the LLM and score based on the frequency of the most common answer. And the most common answer is the one you consider to be correct as a proxy for the confidence of the LLM, which in turn is a proxy for the factuality of that claim. The choice of which technique to use for automated factuality judgments, whether you want to use a reference-based method, checking against Wikipedia, for example, or the reference-free method, depends on whether you have a good corpus or a good reference to test against. And if you don't, then obviously you're going to prefer the reference-free approach. There are advantages to having the reference-based approach as well, because a RAG pipeline can keep up with quick changes in your corpus, and that might be important in some domains. So let's look at what kind of results they got. They've tried out this approach with the Llama 1 and 2 models. These are 7 billion parameter models, so fairly small. I think it's an open question about how effective these techniques are going to be on much larger, much more powerful models. And they found that this technique does improve factual accuracy, especially compared to RLHF, which is very human intensive. They tried it out on 2 tasks, one of generating biographies, another one for asking medical questions. And you can see how for both of these, using the fine-tuning approach in this paper beats out the other approaches in terms of the percentage of correct answers. And note that while there's a small drop in factuality using the reference-free approach, it is still very close to the reference-based approach that checks against Wikipedia. So that was a quick look at a paper that presents a new technique to fine-tune an LLM specifically for factuality, but does it in a way that is completely free of human labeling, so it's fully automatic. And they do see some good gains in factuality of the generated answers. I hope you enjoyed that. If you like content like this, please like the video, consider subscribing, and I will see you all next time. Thank you very much.